Sorry, guys, kind of cut me off. So we are in the middle of chapter 27. Where was I? Oh, she said, "This is not fun." Macy! Aunt Ida's call made Macy jump while heat rushed to her face. She had the awful feeling she'd been caught sounding like a 4-year-old. Aunt Ida came toward her with a covered plate. "I've made you some oatmeal cookies," the woman explained. "Will you take these over to Mr. Oakes? I doubt that man eats much, living alone the way he does." Macy could smell the cookies even though they were covered. It would be tempting to take them into the trees and eat them all, but they were for Mr. Oakes. Besides, she wanted to talk to the man with bells on his knit cap. She pulled off the gloves and left them next to the hoe before taking the plate. "I'll bet he eats these. They smell so good. I'll bet he eats them all." "Come straight back," Aunt Ida said. "Uncle Emery will be home at any minute, and then we'll have supper." Temptation grew as the cookies' spicy aroma swirled around Macy, but she carried the entire plateful to the small cottage across the gravel road. When she knocked, Mr. Oakes came to the door, still wearing his heavy coat hanging loose over a knit sweater and dark pants. He must feel cold all the time in the windy, damp climate of the coast. She was glad she'd brought the cookies. Maybe the oatmeal and spices would warm him up some. He looked at the plate and breathed in deeply. "Is that cinnamon I smell? And vanilla. Could those be cookies?" "They're for you," Macy said. "Mrs. Farrell sent them." "That is good of her, and it is kindly of you to take the trouble to bring them. I saw you working in the garden over there," he added with sympathy in his voice. It looked like unpleasant work. Embarrassed, Macy realized he must have seen her hurl the cornstalk. "It's just that my friends are having a scrap drive," she said. "I wanted to prove I'm as patriotic as they are." Mr. Oakes's clear-eyed gaze seemed to look right into her. She was almost afraid he saw Miss Tokyo hiding behind her eyes. "It can be hard to be the newcomer," he said. "I remember that." It was especially hard to be the newcomer with a secret, Macy thought, but she kept that worry to herself. "They decided on a contest to see who gets the most scrap, the girls or the boys, and here I am working in the old garden. It's going to be a victory garden, but even that doesn't feel as patriotic as collecting scrap for our soldiers." A sparkle came into Mr. Oakes's eyes. "I can help you there. You're welcome to the heap of empty cans piled out behind my place, waiting for my grown son to haul them away." "You have cans? And I can take them?" She was afraid to believe it. "Why not?" Mr. Oakes asked. "You'll get more use out of those cans than my son. He simply hauls them to the dump." Mr. Oakes didn't look like he'd welcome hugs, so Macy hugged herself instead. "Can I get them right now?" She stopped, remembering. "A boy is coming to live with you." "Your nephew? He might be in my class. Will he be mad if you give away the cans?" "Not if we don't tell him." Macy giggled. "Okay. You bring Emery Farrell's wheelbarrow around and I will help you load." A wheelbarrow? She hadn't thought of that. It wasn't a wagon, but she would get less teasing with cans in a wheelbarrow than in a baby buggy. She saw a question in Mr. Oakes's eyes. He was wondering why it mattered so much to her to be the most patriotic, but he didn't ask. She was thankful for that. She liked him, but she couldn't tell him about Miss Tokyo. "I might have to get the cans tomorrow," she said as Uncle Emery's car came down the road to the house. "I need to ask if I can use the wheelbarrow, and it will be time for supper before I can ask. And after supper, I have to roll bandages for the Red Cross again and do my homework." "Whenever you can make it will be fine," Mr. Oakes answered. Macy hoped so. The way her luck was running, and with the Farrells keeping her so busy, that nephew would turn up and claim all the cans for the boys' scrap drive before she could get to them. Chapter 28. "Collecting scrap is a worthwhile job for you," Uncle Emery agreed at breakfast on Macy's first Saturday with them. "But I'd like you to finish cleaning the garden. You've done well. You should be able to clear the tomato patch today." He twisted the dial on his shortwave radio, causing a fresh burst of loud static. Macy tried not to frown. The other kids were meeting with their scrap again today. She had to remember that the Farrells were being kind and letting her stay here. She had to keep reminding herself of that, the way she had to keep reminding herself to call them aunt and uncle. "The new hoe is very sharp," Macy said. "Aunt Ida was telling me a little about Mr. Toyoma. What was he like?" "Toyoma was a pleasant enough fellow, a hard worker." Uncle Emery looked as if thinking back, smiling a little. "He did a lot of fishing and sold most of his catch in town." Uncle Emery enjoyed fishing with him from time to time, Aunt Ida said, her expression warm with memory. She rested the teapot on its stand to listen to her husband with a fond smile. "There was this one time," Uncle Emery said as crinkles appeared at the corners of his eyes. "The two of us were fishing in his old rowboat, and he hooked a big one. We never did see that fish. It happened so fast." "What happened?" That big fish grabbed his line and jerked Toyoma head over boots right off the end of the boat and into the bay. Macy nearly dropped her fork. Did he drown? Uncle Emery would never let that happen, Aunt Ida assured her. For a while there, I thought he might be a goner, Uncle Emery said. Then here comes his hand out of the water, grabbing for the boat. I hauled him in, and I'll be darned if he didn't come up laughing. Laughing? Macy thought she must have heard wrong. Laughing, Uncle Emery assured her. Toyama said he thought the fish must have been the ghost of his cranky old neighbor. The woman always had it in for him when she was living. Macy chuckled with them, though she wasn't sure the story was funny. And now Mr. Toyoma was in an internment camp and Uncle Emery was using his tools. She pushed unsettling questions aside. This was as good a time as any to ask about borrowing the wheelbarrow to collect scrap metal. It won't be any help to you, Uncle Emery answered, turning to his radio. The wheelbarrow needs a new tire, and we won't be getting one while rubber is rationed. We've already talked about that old wicker baby buggy in the shed out back, Aunt Ida reminded her. Uncle Emery nodded. Good idea, Ida. She won't have trouble with the boys trying to steal her tin cans. None of them is likely to run off with a baby buggy. Macy giggled. Maybe the buggy will be better than the wheelbarrow. Even Christopher Adams wouldn't risk being teased by grabbing a baby buggy full of scrap and pushing it through town. On Sunday, Macy came downstairs wondering if anyone knew it was her birthday, her 12th. That was important, but maybe not to the Farrells. Rain and wind had battered the coast for most of the week. After church, the sun broke through like a special birthday welcome. Aunt Ida handed her a card from Papa. This came for you yesterday, but your Papa would want you to have it today for your actual birthday. Macy tried to swallow her disappointment that Papa hadn't come in person. A note in the card wished her a happy day and said that he was sorry not to be there. With gas rationed and tires impossible to replace, he had to limit his driving. Uncle Emery surprised her by suggesting a birthday walk on the beach. I know you wanted to go to the beach, but it's too dangerous on your own. You might not see a sub surfacing out there in the waves until the Japs were already on the beach with their rifles. I'll keep watching the water, she promised. He patted the binoculars he wore at his belt. I'll watch the water. This looks like a good day for you and Aunt Ida to take a look along the wave slope. A storm like this last one may have brought any number of treasures. One of his rare smiles warmed his face. Maybe the sea washed in something just in time for your birthday. A pretty rock or shell you can put on your windowsill for a souvenir. Aunt Ida's smile made her look younger and a little bit mischievous. They say gold pieces from a wrecked Spanish ship sometimes wash ashore at Cannon Beach up north. I don't see any reason the waves couldn't wash one of them down here. Treasure! And sand and ocean. Macy could hardly wait. She all but skipped ahead of the Farrells as they walked up the gravel road toward the highway. The salty, mysterious scent of the ocean was already stronger, along with the restless rush of waves. Before they crossed the highway, Aunt Ida reached for her hand. Cars cut a pretty pace on the paved road. You wouldn't believe how fast some of them drive through here, even with the speed limit lowered to 35 miles per hour during the war. Macy clasped the hand Aunt Ida held out to her, but inside she was still skipping. At last, she would walk on the beach. It had been so near all the time she'd been here. At night, she leaned out her window just to listen to waves rolling onto the sand. Now I need your promise, Uncle Emery warned. You're to stay close by, and if we see anything suspicious, you run for the highway and home the moment we tell you. Suspicious? Like what? Like that submarine I was talking about earlier. Good heavens, Em, you'll have the girl begging to go back to the valley. Let her enjoy a day on the beach. Enjoy your day, he told Macy seriously, but stay near enough that we can keep you safe. Macy promised, wondering who was right. Aunt Ida, who didn't seem worried, or Uncle Emery, who expected to see the enemy behind every wave. As far as she could tell, the waves were just waves. After crossing the highway and railroad tracks to follow a trail between the humps of a sand dune, she gave all her attention to the beach, which seemed to stretch forever in both directions. She'd wanted to come here for so long. If an enemy stormed the beach today and ruined everything, she was going to be really mad. The wave slope, where the tide stopped coming in and began going out, held heaps of driftwood, shells, and seaweed, all arranged and left behind like a giant scalloped tablecloth. Macy couldn't wait to explore. Don't go too far, Aunt Ida warned. I'll find a nice log to shelter behind. The wind's coming up strong. Mr. Farrell, Uncle Emery, Macy reminded herself again, was already scanning the waves for submarines. While Aunt Ida settled behind a large driftwood log out of the wind, Macy ran to see what the storm had washed in. Seagulls shrieked overhead while she collected pieces of oddly shaped driftwood. One looked like a fish, another like a long-legged bird. A third might have been a submarine. She decided not to keep that one. Below the driftwood and seaweed, rocks tumbled in the waves. Some of them glowed as if with an inner light. Agates! She ran to collect one before the next wave washed it out. It was an amber color. She held it to the sunlight to look into the translucent depths. Maybe she would leave all the driftwood, but she was keeping this. Uncle Emery stood on a nearby dune with his binoculars. As Macy started toward him with the agate, she noticed a glint of reflected light from under some driftwood on the wave slope. Curious, she walked closer. I wonder what she found. Sorry my other video cut off. Thanks for listening. Happy last day. Stay tuned. I'll still be recording this book until we finish. Bye.